Where's it going to come from? The buyer or the seller, and I know that this is happening because I spoke with someone the other day, and they basically said, the second said, look, we don't care where the $3,000 comes from, but if you want this to close, the $3,000 better be there. They don't care. It's a way to sidestep the law a little bit. Yeah.
I just had a comment. Just keep in mind some of the buyers, some of the loans out there, the buyer cannot contribute towards the first or second. So keep that in mind as well.
So it comes back to,
It's a VA or
has it helped? Yeah, to some extent, but it's made your life difficult because now you basically have to work with what you have. So if you have a sale price and you have where you're at, you're going to have to get the first and second. So what's the answer on that? Answer is you're probably going to have to get the second to take pennies on the dollar, and you're going to have to get the first to allow that pennies on the dollar to come out of the percentage that they're going to get. They're already doing it to release the lien, where they're allowing $7,000 or $8,000. They may have to go a little bit more just so that they can take care of it. But your arguments back to them is, in the long run, this is still saving you money. Because you don't have to go through the expense of a foreclosure on this. You don't have to pay the attorneys on this. You don't have to have the property on your list because you know what happens if it doesn't sell. You got to put it in. You got your REO. Now you got to take care of and maintain it. And the cities around the state of California are cracking down when it comes to the vagrancy in the properties, abandonment of the properties, and they're going through and they're suing them. And they're putting the liens against it, and that makes it an unattractable property for sale. So the banks are having to step up and take care of the properties. So you do have a little bit of a stick to say, hey, look, it's in your interest to get this accomplished. But everybody sitting in the room knows you have to get the right person on the other side of the phone that understands this concept. Right. You need someone other than the person that's paid $8 an hour to answer the phone and say, no, we can only accept this amount.
Yeah. Now, in that it says that the second, if they receive compensation to release the lien, what if the second says, okay, we're not going to take any money to release the lien right now? Can they come after the seller then? I mean, is that a...
If they put in writing that we are releasing
that's all they need to do?
Releasing the lien, then you can make the argument it's against public policy for them to then come back and try to sue you for the deficiency judgment.
Okay.
Because the fact that they gave up, they took no money on it, didn't remove the fact that they gave you permission in writing to sell the property at short sale.
Okay. So it's
and
not,
I would argue that they accepted zero.
Right.
The lesser amount would be zero. They accepted zero and go down that way. We'll be testing this because I have 2 pending cases where the second is suing after a short sale our client. So I'm going to find out and determine whether it's retroactive or not. The law doesn't say it's not. Generally, they say if it's not retroactive, they say as of this date forward, you can't do X, Y, and Z. They didn't put that language in there, so I'm arguing the point that this is retroactive. You need to dismiss your lawsuit, otherwise we're going to get you for malicious prosecution.
Well, I know I have one right now, and we had tried to do the short sale before. They wanted $10,000, and we're going to hold the seller responsible for the deficiency. We're doing it again, spoke to him on Monday, and he said, due to SA 458, we want $10,000 or we won't release the lien and we can't go after it. I'm like, yay, that's $2,000 less than you wanted before, and now you can't go after my seller. We probably have a deal because the first was going to give up 10.
And that's what I'm saying, is that it's gonna be beneficial. Where you're gonna run into problems is not when it's the bank, it's when you have a servicer. When you have PNC, what's the other one?
Green Tree.
Green Tree.
Where they say, wait a second here, I'm going to lose all this money on my loan here. We're not going to do it. But they're still in the same situation because they have a fiduciary duty to their investors. If you can kind of drop that on them saying, look, you have investors who you have a fiduciary duty to, you're going to lose more money than you're ever going to gain on this if you don't agree to the short sale. I think your investors might have a cause of action against you down the road, but you don't have to say that to them. You can just kind of hint towards it.
If it goes to foreclosure.
If we could ever find those investors, I'd love to sit down and talk to them because they're losing money.
Yeah, I don't think we have.
Yeah, nobody knows who those investors are. Yeah.
Again, 2 things, Chad. Doesn't matter, recourse, purchase doesn't matter.
No, that's what the 2 section takes care of, the recourse, non-recourse.
Okay, and then a short sale negotiators, our first thing now needs to be is to go to our seconds. I mean, before, we have to start now almost with our seconds.
And that's probably
say, how much money will it take for this to release? And then on our HUDs, we need to put that money out to the first.
Yeah, and the first needs to know, the first needs to be aware of the second on that. The first is never the problem. It's always the second, then stick in the mud. And before last Friday, the whole thing is if you couldn't get your second to do it, let it go to foreclosure and deal with your second later and add aspects there. If it was purchase money, you tell them to go pound sand. But Now it's kind of changed it a little bit. With this second being in place, that it wipes out the ability for the second at short sale and short sale only. Now, if you can't get the first and the second to agree and it goes to foreclosure, the first is taken care of, but the second is still out there. And that might possibly happen when you have a second that's more than $100,000.
And then on a foreclosure, the second can still.
Yes,
Okay.
because the second is not affected by a foreclosure. It just releases the lien on the property. They still have the ability to come after you for the loan if it's not a purchase money second. Yes.
I need to include that.
I don't know if this is on your site actually, but I'm trying to find a way to get around it, maybe other people have had it. The second loan says at the very beginning, we'll take, 8,000. Then everybody gets approval letters, everybody starts moving and rocking, and you send them a HUD, and they come back and say, no, we want 10.
Well, then you say, I'm sorry, we've already have a court of satisfaction and a contract. Once you gave us a letter saying you accept $8,000, we have a binding contract. You can't pull this now, and if you want, we'll go ahead and sue you for the bad faith aspect of it, and breach of implied good faith and fair dealing. And call me, because then we get attorney fees and fees.
Hey, there's the bar!
They can't do that, it's a contract, it's a basic contract, you deal with contracts every day. If I offer something to you and you say yes, at that point, if I take it back, I'm breaching.
Right.
And
I would
that's what
think
they're
so,
doing.
yeah.
And that's what they're doing.
And also on the VA loans, if they've accepted a VA loan, whatever bank it is, whatever servicer it is, how can they come back later and say, here's some money that is floating around that somebody's gotta pay for, when they know on VA loans, the buyer's not gonna come up with any money. If they accept that loan and that offer, they should not be able to come back later and say
Say they want more than
anything
what
else.
it was accepted on the offer. They're the same thing, but the problem is it's usually an amount that's not significant enough that you're going to be able to pursue litigation on it.
Right,
When they do the other one where they breach the contract after they give you the amount and say they want more money as to their share of it,
right.
that you can get punitive damage aspects because it's a bad faith cause of action. And you can argue that in the court where you can get more than just the contractual damages. When you have, let's say you $250 offer and they come back and say someone's got to come up with $1,500 to get this taken care of, it's not worth your time and effort to try to get that $1,500 because you're not going to get the aspect on it.
Right.
Two more things. You still can't commit fraud and you still can't commit waste.
Darn.
So don't take out the kitchen sink, the copper, and all that other stuff before you leave, and don't leave the house so that it gets thrashed and everything goes down that way. And tell your clients, don't hide money. They all seem to think that, oh, well, I'm not paying my mortgage and I'm doing this, but I got to seem broke, so I'm going to give it all to grandma, and grandma's going to give it back to me when it closes. That's fraud. Just because you have the money doesn't mean you have to pay them the money. Put it in your accounts, go down that way, because it doesn't change the fact that you're not going to pay them the money. And they can't say, well, you got to contribute that money to us now, because the statute says you can't ask for the money. So if you've got $100,000 in the bank, they can't say, well, you got to give us some of that $100,000. They can say, we're not going to do a short sale, but they can't say, hey, give us that $100,000.
Is that new?
What's that?
That what they can't ask for that money?
Well, they just added it into the statute. That wasn't there before.
Yeah.
It wasn't there before. They added it under B. And they tried to put it under 580B. That's what Corbett originally tried to amend 580B and change it so that the second was just only addressed going down that way. And through the Senate, through the amendments and the debates going down that way, they said, well, we already got it in place. Why don't we just fix what we have? So they actually went through, and I've got copies of anybody's that board that they want to see the edited portion of it going down that way. But they edited the bill. They literally lined out first mortgagor, and then they lined out a whole section, and then what was originally proposed by Ms. Corbett to the Senate back in February, they lined that all out and just said, no, we're not going to do that, and let's do it to this statute here. So I think it's a better result, because if you read what she originally had in there, I don't think it would have been as effective as this is going to be. But once again, with that caveat in mind, it's going to make life more difficult on the negotiation aspects of it.
Okay, I just still can't get off the fact that how are we gonna put money if Uncle Johnny wants to do it for the seller? And if everybody says, I don't care where the money comes from, they don't care? It can
Well,
just be
when you
borrowed
put
to
on
title.
HUD, when you put on the HUD report, you put money from Uncle Johnny. You account for that money comes from. It doesn't say seller's contribution. It doesn't say mortgagor's compensation, trustors or mortgagee or seller. It says Uncle Johnny to get it closed. Third party Uncle Johnny puts the money into the account.
Because if the second one's 5 to close it and they're not gonna come after them, our sellers are gonna find Uncle Johnny to give it the 5.
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. But it's Our government